Hello, this is Benjamin Price reporting for Kids First, and today I'm talking with Jesse Moss, director of the new documentary Mayor Pete, currently streaming on Amazon Prime. Let's take a look. So, the topic of your last documentary only lasted a few days in Boise State, whereas here you were following Pete for a whole year. How did the longer length of time in filming affect your process?
Man, it gave me appreciation for how much we could do in 6 days with Boise State. You can pack a lifetime into a day. This film was really a marathon. I mean, when you're on the road running for president, you never stop moving. And Pete was crisscrossing the country and Iowa, New Hampshire, and just never slowed down. So for me as a filmmaker, trying to keep up with him was just an enormous feat of endurance and patience and persistence. And at the same time, I'm trying to develop a relationship with Pete. He's the subject of the film, but he's got a lot going on around him. And where does Jesse, the filmmaker, kind of fit in? That's something I had to work hard to figure out. And fortunately, Pete, he had agreed to make the film, to let me in. And I wasn't sure he would stay true to that commitment, but he did. And actually, the access only got better the further along we got in the campaign. Even though the stakes got a lot higher for him, he became a real credible candidate. I thought he might just throw me off the bus, but I was able to stay in till the bitter, disappointing end. But it was kind of beautiful too.
And how is the way you see our political process just shifted through the past two movies you've made, which are pretty much centered in that arena?
Yeah, I think about how these films are related, Boise State and Mayor Pete. Part of it is just my desire as an American to understand this political moment. We're a deeply fractured, polarized, divided country. It's hard to know what our political future is. Is democracy going to survive this moment and some of these people who seem to be threatening it? Who are the leaders who are going to carry us forward? Well, they're young people like yourself who are politically engaged, who are not waiting for grownups to fix these big problems we have, climate change, gun violence. That's what interested me about Pete and his politics is, if you remember Boise State, there's a character named Stephen Garza who's in this very conservative group of kids. He finds a message that connects people, that brings people together despite some of those differences. And we have politicians who want to drive people apart. And Pete was a little bit like Stephen and his message of belonging, which is for him rooted in his identity as a gay man growing up in a conservative Midwestern community. Trying to create that message that invited people in was really powerful. And to see that message catch fire, to see his campaign catch fire, and Pete become really a star on the political stage was part of the excitement of the film. And I think look, I'm not here to promote his campaign or his candidacy or his political future. It's an honest and sometimes kind of rough portrait of what he went through. But I do think that our country needs more of that kind of politics that bring people together.
Oh, and that was another interesting thing. I think an interesting sort of thing that both of those movies share is seeing people genuinely moved by what these people have to say, which I feel like can kind of get lost sometimes. But what qualities do you look for in a person or topic that screams documentary worthy?
Often I don't like to focus on stories or people that are attracting a lot of attention. Now, this is the opposite of that. It's a presidential campaign. There couldn't be more attention. And in fact, that was one of my challenges. There would be these events that Pete would do. There would be 100 cameras there. And I would think to myself, this is not where I want to be. I want to be looking in the opposite direction that everybody else is looking. That's part of how I've tried to define my choices as a filmmaker and storyteller. I think what was special for us here was having intimate access to Pete behind the scenes, behind the curtain. How do you prepare for a debate? What's it like to get stuck in an elevator when you're a presidential candidate? What's it like to be married and for your relationship to survive and thrive during a presidential campaign? These were all things that I hadn't seen before in political documentary, and maybe you've seen them on a show like Veep. Or
can you talk about talking about going off of that elevator? Can you talk about that experience of getting stuck in the elevator with Pete and his staff?
Well, I love documentary for the happy accidents, and sometimes your subject's misfortune or your fortune. When things go bad for your subjects, it's sometimes comic relief or good drama. And Pete was on his way to the first debate in Miami. It's the moment's going to make or break his political future. And he's in the elevator, in the service elevator in this big hotel in Miami, and it's got like 10 of his staff in there too. And the elevator like malfunctions and starts to like fall down the elevator shaft. And what I love about that moment is Pete is a cool customer, man. He does not lose his composure. Everybody else, like me included, we're freaking out. I'm thinking, if we're going to plummet to our death, I'm going to keep rolling, because if I don't, what kind of documentary filmmaker am I? I just keep the camera trained on Pete's face, and Pete is a cool customer. And I thought to myself, well, that's the guy whose finger I want on the nuclear trigger, maybe the guy who doesn't lose his composure when things go wrong.
As a documentarian, what is your white whale, the person or subject you've wanted to cover in documentary form that you haven't yet?
Well, this was one of them. I think to step inside the inner workings of a presidential campaign. That's a great question. I mean, I can think of a couple of people who've always fascinated me, who I've wanted to try to make a movie about. Some of them are, one of them in particular, he's kind of a notorious, but I felt like he never really ever talked to the media about his experience. And so I think that was a story that I was intrigued by. I don't know. I mean, I think part of like the times we're in like suggest to me the stories I want to tell. Boys State, which just came out of reading the newspaper, the Washington Post, and reading about this in Texas for teenage boys to create their own democracy. And so I look for inspiration. I mean, I have some things that I keep in my back pocket, but I love when opportunity suggests itself, or an interesting story emerges as a footnote to something I'm reading, and following my impulse as a documentary filmmaker is, I don't know what I love about it. You have a lot of freedom to ignore the conventional wisdom, to follow your intuition and your own impulses, and let those take you to surprising places.
Well, I can't wait to see whatever, back pocket idea you've got next. Thank you so much for talking with me today. Congratulations on the film. Thanks for watching. I'm Benjamin Price, reporting for Kids First. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next interview or review. Have a good one. Bye.
Just to let you know, there is a cow in the audience.
Do we know whose side the cow is on?
There's a lot at stake.